Hello and welcome to the YourTV YourVote Provincial Campaign Debate here at the YourTV studio. Very pleased to have you joining us and to be able to hear from our candidates tonight. And joining us in that vein, we have our candidates from Parry Sound-Muskoka. We have our candidate Graydon Smith with the Ontario Provincial Conservatives. Sorry, Graydon. We also have our NDP candidate Jim Rolston, and we have our Green candidate Matt Richter. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for joining us. And I did pronounce your last name wrong. Sorry, Jim. Ron Holm. Sorry. Thank you very much. I will get used to it as the night goes on, Jim. I apologize. So just a note, first of all, that the Liberal candidate for Parry Sound-Muskoka, David Innes, was invited to this debate, but he did not respond to our invite. So we did put that out, but he did not want to attend. Now we're moving on to the rules of the engagement for tonight. Now, a reminder that all responses will be timed by our lovely timekeeper, Hallie Clover, with the Huntsville Lake of Bays Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much, Hallie, for being involved in this. Now, you will be cut off if you have reached your time. I'm very much a stickler on this. Anyone who's done debates with me before will know I am very to the T. So if you are still answering or haven't finished giving your statement, unfortunately, that will be it. No offense to any of you. That's just the way we do things here. For every question, each candidate will be given 1 minute to respond. And there will be a debate period. I'll be cutting all candidates off at 2 minutes. Now, during that debate period, it is technically available for all of you to talk, but I would request that you politely let the other candidate finish the comment that he may be making before you cut in. Let's make sure that we're all polite in how we're doing this. And Hallie, again, will be timing that for us. Also, during the actual answer period, I would request that no one cut off another candidate during their own answer period. If that does happen, I'll be deducting time from your answer to give them more time to finish their answer. So just so you're aware of that. And that's about it. Just make sure that we're all polite. We're all here doing this as support for Parry Sound-Muskoka. And I'm going to move through my notes here. We're going to have an opportunity to hear what each of you has to say about issues that matter to you before we head to the polls. But first, we're going to start off with your introductions. Now, we did randomly select the order from a hat. We had Hallie, the impartial person, select that order. And of course, the starting of the order is Matt Richter. So Matt, you are invited to take the stage.
Well, thank you, James, and thank you, YourTV, for hosting this debate. My name is Matt Richter. I'm your Parry Sound-Muskoka Green Party of Ontario candidate. I'm a father, a teacher, a small business owner, and a 6-time candidate right here in this riding. Over these past 17 years, I've been knocking on doors, making phone calls, and listening to you in the community as to what your concerns are. And what I've heard from you time and time again is you're frustrated. You're frustrated and you're feeling taken for granted. You're done with the spin, the fake headlines, and the too good to be true statements. You aren't looking for handouts, you tell me. What you're looking for is some fairness. You're asking, why at the provincial level is $2 billion being spent on a mega spa when people in our communities can't make ends meet with their apartment rentals and are accessing the food bank for the first time? Why is this provincial government spending over $50 billion on a tunnel under the 401 when people are wondering about the future of our hospitals? If there's going to be a nurse practitioner or a doctor, a primary caregiver in our future for all the people in Parry Sound-Muskoka. You're also wondering, why on earth did this government just borrow $3 billion to give the super rich a $200 check, while those in education are wondering if those education cuts will ever be reversed so that students can actually meet their learning potential? All of this frustration has come to this point of an unnecessary snap election that we find ourselves in now. Moving forward, I'm ready now more than ever to be a strong, independent voice for you down at Queen's Park to champion a better way forward that brings honesty and integrity back into politics and brings real solutions to your true priorities. I look forward to the conversation and the debate as we move on through this evening.
We're going to have to cut you off there, Matt. Jim, you're up next.
Good evening, and thank you for hosting this event tonight. So I'm a first-time candidate for the NDP, first-time candidate for any party, but running for the NDP to replace the man to my left at Queen's Park. I have lived most of my life in the Muskoka Parry Sound region. Most recently, I've lived in the Strong Township just north of here, and I've lived there for over 30 years. Like many of the things you're going to hear tonight, the NDP shares in a lot of issues that affect all Ontarians, but our focus, it will always be on the individual, the individual's plight and the individual's situation. So, you know, when we are in power, we're not going to be trying to make deals with super corporations. What we're going to be trying to do is find deals that benefit the people in the province the most. My own background, I'm a professor at Canadore College in North Bay. I too have been involved with hockey, coaching hockey at the local level. And I'm a first-time counselor in Strong Township. Those inform my priorities, my personal priorities, which are education, healthcare, and municipalities. But the party also recognizes that there are many more issues beyond that. We all know that there are that there are a number of issues that could be solved with money that has not been spent by the current government. The government has held back on healthcare and education funding. They've made cuts in both of those areas. The $200 that were sent out as vanity checks as an election bribe could have been spent training hundreds of doctors. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And Graydon, you are up.
Well, thanks very much, James. And I've been cut off by the Speaker of the House many times, so if you do cut me off tonight, I'm used to it. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Graydon Smith. I'm the candidate for the Progressive Conservative Party in Ontario, and I've been your MPP, and I've been a local politician here in Parry Sound-Muskoka for a long, long time. But I'll kind of circle around as to how I got there. I really got there by developing an interest in community service because of my parents. I grew up in Port Sydney. They were business owners. Their name is still on the business today, 35 years after they owned it, because I guess they left an enduring mark there because they really cared about the people that they served and the community that they lived in. And that passed on to me. I became a member of a service club, and the mayor at the time, after I'd been president of that club and run a number of community projects, said, hey, how about extending your community service into municipal politics? I took that chance. I ran, I won, and found out how much I absolutely love serving people. And I have made that a commitment over the last 30 years of my life to make sure that either through service club work or municipal politics, and then as your MPP, that I was always giving back, giving to you, humbled to be able to do the job and represent you. Also humbled to be a minister in the Premier's last cabinet in his government. I've seen a lot and done a lot, and I want to bring that experience to work for you, to continue to work for you. We are in very uncertain times. There is no doubt about it. What is occurring in the United States is unprecedented and is a real threat, a real present threat to our economy and our way of life here in Ontario. We need a strong leader in Premier Ford that can stand up to that threat and experienced representation here in Parry Sound-Muskoka. We don't need someone that hopes they can do the job. We need someone that has done the job, and that's me.
All right. That's perfect. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking the time to introduce yourselves. We're going to move right into the questions. And the first question I have for you relates to quite a hot button issue in Parry Sound-Muskoka. $1 billion has been slated to be spent on 2 new hospitals here in Muskoka, with one site in Bracebridge, one in Huntsville. However, there have been many, particularly in South Muskoka, who have questioned and even raised concerns over the plans for these hospital sites and the services that are provided at each. If you are elected as Parry Sound-Muskoka's next MPP, what will you do to ensure that all of Muskoka is appropriately heard and provided for with these 2 new hospital sites? And how will you also ensure that we see shovels in the ground within the next 10 years? Now, as I mentioned before, because Matt went first, Jim has the opportunity to start this questioning period first. So Jim, you have the floor for 1 minute.
I think the most important thing we have to do is make sure that we don't derail the projects entirely. This project has been going on since 2012, and the shovels are not slated to go into the ground for quite some years yet. If we were to have to restart the whole process, then we're looking at not actually putting shovels in the ground until the 2040s, long after any of us who get elected this term would have finished a term. So we absolutely need to spend some time talking to the different communities, especially the doctors in the communities and the medical administrators, the health administrators, because we need a design that works for all of our area, not just one area, not one part of it, and not one part of it over another part of it. But like I said, the biggest thing would be to make sure it doesn't get derailed.
Fantastic. Thank you. Graydon, you're up with 1 minute.
Yeah, thanks very much for the question. If there's one thing that I've worked on over the last 10, 12 years as a mayor and your MPP, it's this project. It was because of the efforts of myself and my predecessor and this current premier that the $1 billion is in play to begin with. We prioritized this project, moving it from somewhere in the 30s to near the top of the list, and we can't lose this opportunity. We need to continue to do the work that I have been doing with the board, with the doctors, with the community to, again, make sure the voices are heard and make sure that this plan, which is an incredibly exciting plan going forward, continues to receive the adjustments that it needs to make sure that everyone's well represented.
Thank you, Graydon. Matt, you are up.
I look forward to continuing the fight for getting the hospitals that we so deserve here in Huntsville and down in Bracebridge, and to hold the Ford government, if they're elected again, to keep to their promise of delivering those 2 hospitals. I often bring to this too years of advocacy of bringing hospitals to our communities, recognizing that I was there with the folks up in Almagwin back in 2008 when they lost their hospital. And we know that in our riding, we've already done our sacrifice, and I'll fight that this is what we deserve and we expect. And we are going to be continuing forward with the best plan forward that meets the healthcare needs of both communities in the Muskoka-Almagwin region.
Fantastic. We are heading into the debate period, gentlemen. This is our first one. I'm just taking a moment to quickly remind you we'll have 2 minutes for this debate period. Again, you are all free to speak, but I would ask that you respect the other candidate that may be talking to allow them to finish their thoughts. Now, if a candidate rambles on forever, I'll cut them off. And we're going to have 2 minutes. If I can ask our timekeeper just to hold that out a little further so that they can see it, that would be great. Okay, so 2 minutes starting now with our timekeeper. Please.
Well, let's talk about the facts of what's going on here. An unprecedented investment in a small town hospital or hospital sites of $1 billion. We've never seen that before. That's our government that brought this to the table. So the community can design what works best for it. So the voices of the community can travel through the board and senior management, and it get designed by those at the local level that come up with the plan and execute the plan. We're not the hospital designers at the provincial level. We are the funders, and we've put an incredible and unprecedented amount of money into this project.
Okay. I'd like to add that it's not just the government, it's the taxpayers of our region of Ontario that are bringing this project to fruition, and it's our dollars that need to be so wisely spent on this type of build.
Because I've been involved with the local share fundraising for this hospital, and so I know absolutely that it's our local funds are going into this as well. It's not just a provincial government. I've also heard people say that you need to re-elect the Conservative government because the project will die. I guarantee you, if you elect an NDP government, this project will not die. We will commit to making sure that those hospitals are built.
And I think backroom deals where people say, if a government's elected, this will happen, is the old way of doing politics, and that's what's frustrating people so often nowadays. We don't want backroom deals to get the healthcare we deserve. We want what's done to be honest and fair, and in our riding, we deserve the 2 hospitals that has been put on hold for the past 7 years, and we still aren't seeing any action.
What people want is representation. What people want is this project to move forward. What people want is the funding to make this happen, and we have brought all that to the table. And again, my expertise is in this area, having been part of this from the beginning, having fought for both communities to receive new sites. I mean, who is best positioned to continue that conversation? I think it's me.
Jim, quick.
Just any insinuation that another party would not support that build is crazy.
Okay, I think we're pretty close to the end, so we're going to cut that off there. Thank you, gentlemen. That was very respectful. We appreciate that. We're moving on to question 2. This is related to question 1. We've seen a dramatic dip in healthcare provisions for Ontarians. And in Parry Sound and Muskoka, thousands of people cannot seem to find a family doctor. If you are elected as MPP, what will you do to ensure that these residents are able to find the medical care that they need so direly outside of putting them into the hospitals and putting that extra pressure on local hospitals as well? Graydon, you're up first.
We're going to keep executing that plan that Dr. Philpott talked about that is going to get everybody connected to a family care provider in the coming years. $1.8 billion to make sure that that happens. We've been working with Dr. Philpott. She is a very big fan of working through family health teams. We have that basis here in Ontario to launch off of already a number of health teams within Parry Sound-Muskoka. In fact, we provided dollars to expand and grow those health teams through our government in the last 18 months. And it was great to be able to be in Sundridge, great to be able to be in Burkes Falls here in Huntsville to talk about those dollars and the differences it's making and will continue to make for people as they become more and more attached to primary care. So we'll continue that work right here in the riding, continue to make sure that everybody gets attached.
All right, Matt, you have 1 minute.
We're at the Green Party of Ontario is more than committed now than ever to ensure that our tax dollars are going to the strategies to ensure that the healthcare is there for what we deserve. Starting with funding properly the health hubs, nurse practitioner-led clinics, health teams, so that Carling, Burkes Falls, and Gravenhurst are seeing the investments going into those facilities. We're going to ensure that our tax dollars are going into recruitment and retainment strategies to bring doctors and nurses to our area. We also have to recognize that we have to bring good public policy to reduce the administrative burden that doctors are complaining about that's slowing down their efficiencies. And then lastly, we must fast track our internationally trained doctors that are existing right here. In fact, I heard a story in Gravenhurst yesterday of a doctor who's doing a different job than actually what they were trained for. We have to fast track that through to alleviate this situation.
I'll let you just ask the timekeeper. For Mr. Ronholm, you can hold it out way further. Don't worry about that camera, just so he can see it. Mr. Ronholm, this is your opportunity.
So the NDP, first of all, actually, I want to mention that I was involved in a discussion where Dr. Philpott was invited to discuss with the Almaguin Highlands Health Centre Committee around her whole idea of family health teams. And we completely support this concept of primary care needing to be a focus of any government spending in healthcare. The primary care is where everything starts. If you have health issues, you need to have a primary care provider. Thousands and thousands of people in the north do not have primary health care. And so we would be hiring more doctors. We would be making sure that there are actual doctors assigned to each catchment area, because as many of you in this area know, that there are townships in this area for which there is no family health team with funding to cover the people in those communities. So they're having to visit communities that they're not covered by. We also know very well that those who are trained in the north are more likely to stay in the north, and so we would increase the number of NOSM placements for residencies for doctors to be trained in the north, so that they would remain in the north when they're finished their education.
I'm going to cut you off there because I think our timekeeper maybe gave 2 minutes there. So we're going to, if the other candidates are forgiving of that, we can maybe move forward with that. Okay, we'll forgive our timekeeper is doing a very good job. She just got a little confused on the timing. 1 minute. Sorry, we're into the debate period, so this is 2 minutes open forum.
Well, what I will say is, it's great to hear that there's support for expanding the number of seats at NOSM, which is exactly what our party is already doing and committed to, and building a new medical school in Vaughan that is solely committed to producing more family doctors. We're going to preserve those seats for mostly Ontarians to come, over 90% Ontarians. We're going to pay them, and then we're going to have a learn and stay program so that they can go and practice in underserved areas, the same thing that we've been doing with nurses. So, when we look at the capacity that our party has been creating in primary care, there's going to be a big payoff over the coming years as we attach people to new doctors, nurse practitioners, family health teams, all these care providers in communities big and small throughout the riding, all because of the steps that our government's taking today.
Okay,
so people here in our riding are asking the question, though, after 7 years of Doug Ford's government, why are we in a position now where we have 2.5 million people in Ontario without a family doctor, primary caregiver? Why are there 20,000 people right in Parry Sound-Muskoka without a doctor? We have a crisis of caring in this province, and it ripples down right into Parry Sound-Muskoka. We have to do better, and the issue here is that it's been ignored for far too long, and during the snap election that's unnecessarily being called, all of a sudden we're hearing of these different strategies. We have to do
It's
better.
not all of a sudden we brought
So-
Dr. Philpott on months ago.
Just allow Jim to talk.
Doug Ford was elected 7 years ago. The Doug Ford government was elected 7 years ago on a promise to fix healthcare. Healthcare has only gotten more broken in the last 7 years.
A problem that's occurring all through the country, and everyone's conveniently forgetting that COVID happened somewhere in there too and completely disrupted the healthcare system. We have taken all the steps necessary to make sure that people get attached in the
Well, I
coming
don't
years.
think the long-term care facilities would agree with that. And
We're going to have to cut you off there. Sorry. Thank you very much. We're moving on to a new topic. This is to do with housing, which has been top of mind for many residents in this riding. Shortages only seem to continue, and with rental costs going up and wait lists growing even higher, and for housing assistance growing higher as well. What do you and your party plan to do to solve this issue of the lack of appropriate housing for all residents, not just high income earners? And now we have Jim has the opportunity to start.
Well, one thing that we would not do is just simply make it easier for developers by removing protections, environmental protections, and other planning issues. There are absolutely ways to streamline the development process, but when we do this, we have to keep in mind all levels of build. If we only incent developers to build what they want to build, they're going to build the most profitable units, which are not going to be the units that we most need. Not that we need none, but that we most need. So we need to make sure that affordable housing is being built, geared to income housing, and we need to bring back rent control, because rent control is part of, or lack of rent control that has been removed is part of the reason why people can't afford housing.
All right, great.
You know, our party's taken steps to make sure that we see more purpose-built rentals and homes built in this province. First, through investing in what municipalities have told us is the #1 factor that inhibits growth: infrastructure. $50 million right here in Huntsville to enable a massive water sewer project that will enable more growth in this community, more homes in this community. $14 million we've invested into Parry Sound, over $2 million in McDougall Township. Those water and sewer systems are critical to getting more homes built. At the same time, we'll keep making sure that those that require supportive housing have that housing. We look at Alex's Place in Bracebridge, a project that our government funded to make sure that those types of homes exist as well.
All right, Matt, 1 minute.
so homes and apartment rentals that people can afford in Parry Sound-Muskoka are non-existent. They are at a crisis level, is what people are telling me. Right now, it is at a time where it's over $1,500 for a single one-bedroom apartment. We have people who cannot make ends meet and are literally using the food bank for the first time because their apartment rent is taking all of their earned income. We have to do better. We must invest with nonprofits to get on with building co-ops and nonprofits that people can actually afford to live in and thrive in. We have to recognize the Muskoka Community Land Trust, the Georgian Bay nonprofit, and Habitat for Humanity as being some partners that we can bridge with and finance to get the job done.
All right, so we have our 2-minute period, and this is open forum.
So I want to tell a story about a phone call that I received this week from a resident in Parry Sound. They had a stroke. They ended up in a hospital. They were evicted while they were in a coma. When they came back from their coma, they have nowhere to live and no help anywhere to find somewhere to live. They are being sent to a rehab. They are being sent out of their area to a shelter where the Ontario government is willing to pay $4,000 a month for taxi to bring them back into town for rehab, but not willing to pay $1,800 a month to give them a spot in the community where they would not have to have taxi rides.
Jim, unfortunately, and I agree, it's horrible, your story that you're just sharing, and unfortunately these stories are shared across our riding of Parry Sound-Muskoka, and again, it's the failure of the Ford Conservative government that has not built homes or apartment rentals to get people in to a place that they can afford and love to live in. We have to do better, and this comes from appropriate funding. We need to give the municipalities, the districts, the means to get purpose-built homes that people can afford to live in, and actually thrive and move forward.
And $50 million does just that. A massive investment, an unprecedented investment, again, in infrastructure in the municipalities here in Muskoka to make sure that housing gets built. The whole basis of what we need is capacity to allow these homes to come online. We're making those investments. The communities have asked for it. We're doing it.
Okay, we're going to cut it off there. We're moving into a quick break. I just want to, again, reiterate that we have invited all the candidates with seated parties to this debate tonight. Unfortunately, our Liberal candidate did not choose not to attend, even though we had reached out. We're going to quickly go to a video of one of our non-seated candidates. This is just going to give our candidates an opportunity to take a breath and a glass of water. So we're going to take a look at that video now. We'll be right back.
Hello, Parry Sound-Muskoka. My name is Brandon Nixie, your New Blue Party candidate. We stand for integrity, freedom, and true conservative values. Unlike the progressive conservatives, who many feel have strayed from these principles, New Blue promises to reinvigorate individual responsibility and free market economics. In our stunning region, we prioritize the environment with a non-ideological energy policy, favoring nuclear and water energy sources over landscape-marring wind turbines that inflate electricity bills. We'll cut the HST from 13% to 10%, aiming to eliminate it altogether, putting more money back in your pockets across Huntsville, Bracebridge, and beyond. Education is crucial, and we'll bring back the Safe Schools Act to ensure our schools are places of learning and not political experimentation. We're aware of the rising cost of living from Parry Sound to Gravenhurst, and our economic strategies focus on growth that benefits all, not just the elites. We oppose the carbon tax, which burdens our local businesses and families, and support personal freedom and health choices. Choose me for my leadership experience, vision, and local understanding to tackle overlooked issues like healthcare access and boosting our economy. Vote New Blue for a community that thrives on freedom, responsibility, and true conservatism.
All right, we're back. And just to note, we did reach out to Helen Croker with the Ontario Party for an opportunity to submit her video. Unfortunately, she did not respond to us. We are moving on to question 4. Just because we're a little bit behind in timing, we're going to skip the debate period but allow for the answers in this. So both Parry Sound and Muskoka are growing at an exponential rate, but while that is happening, many residents are seeing a rise in things like poor infrastructure, roads not being upkept, community centers struggling to stay open, and even issues with bridges needing massive repairs. We even had a significant closure on Highway 11 last year when cars became stuck in the snow during what was one of the most historic weather events we've seen to date. So what does your party plan to do to ensure that the cost of infrastructure keeps up with population growth in this region and doesn't come down on taxpayer wallets? And how will you ensure that major highways under provincial purview are kept safe for drivers even in the worst conditions? Graydon, you're up.
Yeah, we've made huge investments in this riding over the last 2.5 years while I've been your member. Over $520 million of investments in total, and a lot of that in the hard infrastructure that James was talking about in the question, whether it's roads or bridges or water and sewer systems, funds like the OSIF fund that go directly to municipalities, raising the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, again, money directly into municipalities, plus a number of purpose-driven funds to make sure that municipalities have the infrastructure dollars that they need. I've been a mayor. I've done this. I know how to advocate for this, and I've successfully advocated for those dollars here in the communities.
Matt.
Again, people in our riding are looking for fairness here. They're wondering why Doug Ford, Graydon Smith's PCs are investing so many billions of dollars in infrastructure in the GTA that even people in Toronto don't want, when we still have potholes up here. We still have infrastructure challenges around our bridges, our roadways, issues on our highways. Why is that money not fairly coming back here to look after the roads and the infrastructure that we already have? We must look at diverting money from unnecessary projects like a fantasy tunnel, the world's longest supposed tunnel under the 401 at a cost of a minimum of $50 billion, and redirect that money to offload the costs off of municipalities so they can have the roads and bridges that they deserve.
All right, and Jim.
Yeah, so as a municipal councillor, I too have seen this situation where municipalities are struggling to keep their levies down, at the same time improve their infrastructure. there's more and more costs that municipalities are required to shoulder because the provincial government has downloaded them over years and years and years. Successive governments, not just the current particular government. That offloading has to that downloading has to change, and there needs to be some uploading so the municipalities will be able to afford things. The NDP have also studied the roads in the north and have made propositions to 4-lane or 2+1 highways, more highways to make our highways safer so that there will be fewer accidents, so there will be fewer closures.
All right, thank you. As mentioned, we're going to skip the debate portion just to get back on time here, so we're moving on to the next question. The COVID-19 pandemic shed light on a lot of issues for our province, most notably a concerning trend regarding violence in the home. Last year, a bill was put forward, Bill 173, that would label intimate partner violence as an epidemic. Now, we had 95 municipalities in Ontario, including here in Parry Sound-Muskoka, who signed their own calls to action when it comes to labeling intimate partner violence as an epidemic in this province. To date, that bill has still not been passed, and since it was first introduced last March, which means the province does not officially recognize intimate partner violence as an epidemic at this point. So my question is, what will you do as the next MPP for Parry Sound-Muskoka to ensure that the Ontario government recognizes this as an issue that is not going away? Matt, I apologize, I didn't give you the opportunity first last time, so you're first up.
Okay.
1 minute.
Intimate partner violence is at a time right now where it needs the absolute action down at Queen's Park, and it has to be declared an epidemic. And I applaud the NDP for bringing this forward, and this is how we do politics, working across party lines. 100% support behind the NDP motion to bring that forward and have it declared. Unfortunately, we're in this bizarre snap election unnecessarily, and this just did not get through the last time. Also, to this point, we have to continue our conversations and hear best strategies forward, and that's partnering up with the YWCA and other organizations as to what action needs to be meaningfully directed to go forward with this.
Jim, 1 minute.
As Matt has so kindly pointed out, this is an NDP motion that is pending, that will be dying on the floor. We'll never get to a vote at Parliament. But we all know that the Conservative majority would never have passed it anyways, because the Conservative majority does not look at cross-party issues. The Conservative government has their own agenda, and part of that agenda is not allowing motions from other parties to succeed. Clearly, no society can sustain an epidemic of intimate partner violence. It has to stop.
Agreed, 1 minute.
Having been a mayor in a community where intimate partner violence was tragically expressed a number of times in the worst possible way, it's something that means a lot to me. And it means a lot to our party. I think the fact that this private member's bill was introduced was fantastic. We took that bill and said, let's take it to committee, hold full hearings on it, get more information, work harder and harder and harder on it. So to go beyond simply a declaration of an epidemic, but be able to bring things forward that matter, that will reduce intimate partner violence in Ontario and make communities safer. And that's what our party's committed to. We're not in a debate right now.
Yeah, we're not in debate. And out of respect, well, Matt, out of respect for this issue, I did put this as a debate, but I'm going to respect the issue and not make this a debate issue because I don't think this is one we should be debating. We're going to move on to the next question. And this one is much more personal for me. Mental health has become a considerably large epidemic across Canada and the globe, with more and more people finally coming forward to express their own mental health issues. But it seems like the demand outweighs the supply, as many find themselves put on wait lists or even unable to afford the astoundingly high cost of getting the appropriate help that they need. What will you and your party do to support the mental health needs of residents of Parry Sound and Muskoka? Jim, you're up for 1 minute.
Well, I think the first thing that needs to be taken care of is the primary health care provider, because that's where you need to start any journey, any medical journey, whether it's mental health, which is absolutely essential that we deal with, or any other health situation. You need to start with your primary health care provider. And if you don't have one, then you're at a loss on how you can even start to navigate any health system, including the mental health system. We need more facilities, more practitioners in every community in our area, and we need to make it easy for people to get support from those practitioners.
Thank you, Jim. Graydon.
James, I've talked about my own mental health struggles with you, I think in this studio and on shows that you produced here on Kojiko. It's incredibly important. And I've said multiple times, I think we've never been more aware of our own mental health challenges and those of others. And that's why our government brought the first Minister of Mental Health and Addictions in the province of Ontario, put that person in place, Dr. Michael DeBolo, and brought forward our roadmap to wellness, which is focused on mental health and addiction challenges here in Ontario, getting services into the communities. We recently upped the budget for mental health, the base budget in communities. I've been working with folks like Mind Aid and Jody North and the great work that they do, and will continue to do that because this is very, very close to me, as it is to many, many people.
All right, you're up.
First and foremost, that we all declare that mental health is health, and we recognize that at the provincial level by ensuring that all mental health is covered under our OHIP card. That is a first step that must happen. I was really proud back in the last election that we were the first party ever to publish and promote the first standalone mental health paper that gave that roadmap that, other parties took best practices from. We're not the experts. The experts are there needing to be funded so that they can have the services being put forward to the community. We see it all the time in education where there's a backlog of students waiting for that assessment to get the care they need. Then we see further years of people just not having access. Why? Because there's a shortage of mental health care professionals.
I think, again, out of the respect for this issue, we're going to skip the debate period here because we don't need to be arguing over this issue. So we're going to move on to the next question. We'll return the debates with this one. Now, this is our first of two chamber questions that were submitted from the Huntsville Lake Bay's Chamber of Commerce, who are partnering with us in today's debate. So, housing taxes research indicates that government taxes and fees constitute 36% or over $360,000 of the final price of a new home in Ontario. Land transfer taxes, sales taxes, and development charges quickly add up, making homeownership less attainable for many. If elected, what steps will you take to lower the tax burden on Ontario homebuyers and improve affordability? And Graydon, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, so we've specifically tackled this with bills that we brought forward to lower development charges on affordable housing. And we've seen fantastic examples of that. We could get in the truck right now and go for a drive to see examples of developers right here in the community that have built myriad units that are affordable and are more affordable because of the changes that we've made. They've been in touch with me to say, that is great, keep going, do more. You are really, really helping us out. So we're seeing tangible examples of making sure that through policy, we're lowering the costs for developers to build affordable housing here in Parry Sound-Muskoka.
Thank you, Graydon. Matt, 1 minute.
Really proud that we have this outlined in our current platform, which, by the way, I'm really proud as well that our party is the only one with a fully costed platform that we put out there so people can check in with what our policies are. To ensure that home buying is a possibility, for homes 2,000 square feet or less, we are saying this is where we are really progressive in taking the development charges off of, again, those homes that are 2,000 square feet and less. And for first-time home buyers, taking off the land transfer tax. Those two measures on their own are going to make an incredible impression on those looking to be getting into their first home ever for now and moving into the future.
Jim?
First home buyers are always going to be struggling with buying their first home. That's part of the issue. And increasing the cost of any first home for anybody is not going to help any of our local societies, cultures in housing their people. So yeah, we need to reduce the extra costs that are added on top. There's cost for, it costs money to develop a house. It costs money to purchase property, but the government doesn't need to be also taking their own chunk to increase that cost.
All right, we're going to open the floor to a 2-minute debate. Go ahead.
We've had a Red Tape Reduction Act that has brought 2 bills forward every year since 2018 to eliminate the barriers, not only to housing, but also for businesses and government activities as well, to make it easier to build those homes, to get the shovels in the ground. That reduces the development costs. And when we talk about development charges, you got to be honest, those prices costs don't just go away because you decide they go away. They get shifted onto other taxpayers. So it can be a little bit disingenuous for a party to say, hey, we're going to make sure that we're helping municipalities, but shift a bunch of costs onto municipalities. And I think that's what my friends here are saying. No. You have to be very, very careful with the way you approach
what we're
that.
saying here is instead of paying and putting that burden back on the property taxpayers, we are saying we're going to upload that and we're going to pay for it by diverting
raising
money
taxes on a whole bunch of other things.
I've
read your cost of platform. It's expensive.
Graydon, we're just going to allow Matt to finish.
What I'm sharing with all of you right now to set the record straight is we are going to say no to a $50 billion tunnel under the 401 and use some of that money to afford for some of these price measures, which we recognize is a cost. I'm wondering if the Red Tape Reduction Act actually allowed you to, in your party, to open up the Greenbelt, which is now under investigation.
All right, we're going to let
for multi-million-dollar homes.
We're going to let Jim respond because Jim hasn't had a chance yet.
Right. So the other thing about the Red Tape Reduction Act and the issue of making it easier for developers to produce properties is that they're producing the wrong properties. And without any sort of control over what you are doing, how you are controlling what the developers can build, you are incenting them to build properties that are not affordable.
And Graydon, just a quick opportunity to respond.
We want to make sure that we give municipalities the opportunity to make the decisions that are right for those communities. We don't want to force solutions on communities like the Greens or the NDP. And my goodness, some of the stuff we've seen out of the Greens is quite something in terms of density that will ultimately change what communities look like. And if you want to have 11-story towers on your main street, you go right ahead.
Matt, just a quick 10 seconds to respond. We got to move on.
Okay, again, we've set the record straight. 11-story towers, 7 to 11-story towers are a provision meant for large urban centers, which means 100,000 people or more.
That was because I caught your mistake. I caught your mistake and you changed your policy.
Okay, I think we're going to move on. We have another question from the Huntsville Lake-Based Chamber of Commerce. This one again in the housing vein. In many rural and smaller communities, the housing crisis is intensifying and missing middle housing, such as duplexes, triplexes, and townhomes, is in short supply. Zoning laws, servicing costs, and developer priorities often favor large single-family homes over these more affordable housing options. How will you ensure provincial policies support smaller communities in building a broader range of affordable housing options? I think, Jim, you were up next here.
I mean, the biggest thing we could do is better spend government funds. We have just gone through a short term, because it was a snap election, but a short term where we saw, provincial funds being spent on a spa for rich people. We see early closure of a science center that didn't need closing, the cost required to move it. We've seen $200 checks, billions of dollars worth of spending that could have been spent on actually building homes. The government itself could have been building the homes and then transferring them to municipalities. Instead, they chose all of these other, well, I'm going to call them boondoggles, to spend your tax dollars on instead.
All right, great.
If you think the government is going to build its way out of housing challenge, I think you're sorely mistaken. It takes all levels of government with a very key set of perspectives and priorities on what you want to do, including the private sector. And again, I look to those that have made it happen and have made it work here in Parry Sound-Muskoka as examples for others. At the local level, communities need to decide what their communities want to look like and what those areas for growth are that are appropriate to maintain that character and keep that Parry Sound-Muskoka feel. At the same time, there are lots of opportunities to build homes that are going to work and rentals that are going to work for people on the more attainable end of the market. And it's been happening.
All right, Matt, 1 minute.
When we know there's stats like it takes 20 years for the next generation to not just afford a house, but to afford a down payment on a house, we know critical action has to move forward. We recognize the affordable housing crisis is real, and that takes meaningful policy to bring solutions forward, starting with legalizing fourplexes across Ontario so communities here can get on with building homes and apartment rentals and units that people can actually afford to live in. We also have to make sure that development's maintained in our urban boundaries, so we're not looking at sprawl and we're not looking at subdivisions that start at $1 million. Nobody can afford those. That is part of the problem, is that the current development being offered by the government that isn't meeting the needs of people today. People want affordable housing, and the government needs to get back into the business of partnering with municipalities to get the job done.
All right, so we're going to move into the debate. Open floor, 2 minutes.
Okay, really quickly, a good stat to know is over 90% of affordable housing units that were built with government assistance were built before the 1990s. So existing affordable stock that is currently here was from the 1990s. That means the government of different colors over these past 30 years have not been front and center with the good work that had been done up until that point. When we're talking about getting back in the business of building homes, we're saying as a provincial government, we have to give the tools, the policies, so that developers and nonprofits can get on with building these affordable units.
Because if all you're doing is reducing the costs and making it easier for developers to develop, they're going to develop what gives them the highest profit. And
Exactly.
what gives them the highest profit is not what people need. We have an entire demographic who has almost given up on the idea of owning a home. We have to fix that.
But that investment in infrastructure is absolutely critical, and you'll see that again brought to the table over and over again by our government. We don't have a sprawl issue in Muskoka. The urban boundaries of these communities were defined long ago. So again, the urbanist is talking about things that are happening in southern Ontario and not in Parry Sound-Muskoka. We've got the land to build on. We need to get the infrastructure in place to allow the building to happen. And again, I can take you to the examples of affordable housing that have been built all throughout this area. We need more of it. Let's do it.
All right, I'm going to ask a question, a viewer submitted question I had in my back pocket here, and it actually relates very heavily to this, so I'm going to throw it out there now. The question is, will you legalize real rent control and invest in public housing? And we're going to start, I believe, with Matt. Yeah, 1 minute.
For sure. And very proud of Ashlyn Clancy, Kitchener Centre Green MPP, for bringing in rent control and advocating on the rights of tenants and landlords, because we know there's just a few bad actors on both sides that have led to the crisis situation that we're in right now. So bringing in rent control, preventing rent evictions obviously is the next step, but bringing in meaningful policy that can be acted upon by all cross-party support, because we don't have time. The next generation does not have time to have political bickering going on down at Queen's Park. This is why it's so important that we get down to Queen's Park, work across party lines, and ensure that rent control and rent that makes sense for landlords and tenants has the policy to actually pave the way forward.
Jim, 1 minute.
So the real rent control is absolutely a tenet of all of the NDP platform. Whether you're looking at the North Bay, the Northern platform, whether you're looking at a Southwestern Ontario platform, all the platforms in every area of Ontario, the NDP has pushed for real rent control. And when we say that, we're talking about the fact that rent control has actually been removed from properties in the last government. We have a situation where people who felt safe in their rental units who are no longer able to afford the units that they were previously affording.
All right, grade 1 minute.
What we need is a great mix of landlords and tenants out there that are working together to make sure that housing is being provided and those that are living in it are comfortable and have a place to live. And the tribunal plays a big role in that. We've invested more money in the tribunal to hear some cases that are out there right now and get that backlog cleared up. But beyond that, rent control will not solve the problem. What it will do is stop a bunch of new rental properties from ever being built, because the development community will say, I cannot make money on this. I may in fact lose money on it. But what we can do is provide the infrastructure, provide the basis for development. And again, I keep coming back to the examples that exist in this community that we want to replicate over and over and over again, to have a private investment that results in affordable homes both purchase and rental, and a great ending to his story.
Last question, so really quick 1 minute debate. I'll open the floor.
Okay, so with Landlord-Tenant Control Board, the backlog is also a result of the lack of funding and the lack of support to ensure that all of those hearings can get resolved. And what we're seeing is that there's all of these loopholes so that, again, the bad actors on both sides aren't getting, are getting reinforced to continue doing what they're doing, which just exacerbates the situation. It's a funding failure of this current government that has not stepped up to ensure that the hearings and the backlog has been truly acted upon. We must do better, and this again comes to a lack of insight.
It's more than just a funding problem, it's a policy problem as well. The Landlord-Tenant Act isn't working for landlords or tenants. You know, it's a problem from both sides. The backlog now means that you will be out of your home if you're being rent evicted. You'll be out of your home, and it'll be years before you ever even have your case heard. No way you'll be getting back into the home that you've been evicted
Great
from.
and quick opportunity for response.
Yeah, an opportunity again to continue to work together, I think, on both sides of that equation to make sure that the system is fair for everyone. And we have invested more in the Landlord-Tenant Board to make sure that we're clearing that backlog of cases that started during COVID because we didn't want people to be out of their homes.
Perfect. Gentlemen, really, really great conversation today. I appreciate all of you taking the time to respond in such a respectful way to each other. So we're going to move on to wrapping up, but before we do, I'm giving you each an opportunity to have your final 2 minutes, have your final say. As mentioned, Graydon, because you were picked last in the hat, you get to be first and last but not least. So please take your 2 minutes.
What goes around comes around. Folks, again, it has been an honor and a pleasure to be your MPP and to be part of a government that has brought an unprecedented level of investment to Parry Sound-Muskoka. But over and above that, I think we've brought an attention to detail with me as your representative. I have been in communities big and small over and over and over again to talk to people about what is important to them. And I think because of that hard work, because of my kind of never-ending zest for doing this job, I'm having a lot of people support me as we go through this journey, especially from the healthcare field. We talked about healthcare earlier. Dr. Rohit Gupta, Dr. Luke Wu, Dr. Scott Wynot, Dr. Keith Cross, and more doctors from South Muskoka that recognize the very, very hard work that I have done, not only on the hospital file, but in terms of representing Parry Sound-Muskoka and all of our great residents on healthcare and other issues. One thing we haven't talked about much today is the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund and the fact that I was able to successfully bring that economic development fund right here in Muskoka, which will provide, an unprecedented and unbelievable amount of opportunity for businesses, nonprofits, and other organizations to continue to grow and excel. What we want to do is bring prosperity to residents here in Parry Sound-Muskoka. And it doesn't matter what community you live in, big and small. We don't want to tell you how to live your life. We don't know better than you. We just want to make sure that you've got the opportunity to live a life that you want and a life that's prosperous. And our government will provide that, and I'll continue to provide the very best service I can as your MPP.
Thank you, Graydon. Matt, 2 minutes. Yep.
Thank you very much. And again, it's just been a real honor to be here and debating the issues that matter most to all of you. We have an opportunity during this election, an opportunity to change the course of how politics is done. A way of doing politics where we put people ahead of party, that we're done with the bickering, the false promises, and the spin. That we must move forward in a way that the MPP goes down to Queen's Park to work for you. Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Green Party, is not my boss. Doug Ford's not my boss. Any leader is not my boss. That's because you are. You, the voter. And what I've heard from you today around issues of hospital, healthcare, intimate partner violence needing to be declared an epidemic, mental health being covered under OHIP, infrastructure being climate resilient, and infrastructure being ready so that our bridges and roads have the funding that they deserve. Mental health being, again, a key and cornerstone, not just out in society at large, but especially in our education system, in which we've seen a $1,500 cut to every single student amassing over $3 billion of cuts so that we see students not getting the assessments that they deserve. Why am I focused on this? Because they're our next generation. And what are we setting up for that next generation right now? It's just a lot of lacking that requires attention. Moving forward, I'm ready now more than ever to be that strong independent voice for you down at Queen's Park so that we can reverse the reckless spending of the Ford government and put that to matters that matters most to you. And those are the priorities that you've been sharing with me during this campaign and over the past 17 years. I would be more than honored, and it would be a privilege to be your next MPP down at Queen's Park. Thank you.
Fantastic. Jim, you have the floor, final.
Well, thank you. So clearly, we've heard the word unprecedented multiple times tonight. I think Graydon has used the word 4 or 5 times. Today, the word unprecedented really has been used to mean things are more expensive than they used to be. Not there is a new thing. You know, there's a hospital in Bracebridge, there's a hospital in Huntsville. We need new hospitals. They're unprecedented cost because they cost more to build today than they cost 50 years ago when they were built, when their previous buildings were built. Everything is less affordable today. We have had 7 years of things becoming more and more, or less and less affordable, more and more expensive. We have things that are unprecedented are the number of people using food banks. Things that are unprecedented are the number of people who are looking for homes and can't afford homes. Things that are unprecedented are the mental health crisis that the people in Ontario are going through, not that many people in Ontario are going through. Those are issues that involve individual humans, not corporations. An NDP government and myself as your representative would be fighting for those individual humans, the people who are impacted by these decisions, not the corporations, not the rich corporations that the Doug Ford government owes.
All right. Before we wrap up, we have just a few minutes, so quickly I'm going to offer you an opportunity just to let people know how they can find out more about you. Matt, how can people find more about you as a candidate?
Oh, thanks for that opportunity to plug a way to get in touch. We have campaign offices in Bracebridge, Gravenhurst, Huntsville, and Parry Sound. Online, mattrichter.ca. And from any of those different ways forward, it's always an open door. And part of what we say with doing politics, the best way forward is to be listening. After all, as I said earlier in my remarks, you're my future boss. And the only way I can know what's on your mind is if we have that constant conversation and that engagement to move forward. So thank you.
Jim, more information on getting a hold of you?
I think the easiest way to get hold of me is to go to the Ontario NDP website and go to the candidates tab, because you may have trouble spelling my name, Ronholm.
Or pronounce it wrong.
Or pronounce it wrong. But you can search it fairly easily just by typing in Jim, and it will shorten the list very quickly. And you can click on the links there to get hold of me.
Okay, and Graydon.
You can go to graydonformpp.ca, and that'll take you to the site. Coming soon to a door near you, because the team is out door knocking every day and talking to people. Coming soon to an event near you, because I'm out doing that as well. And of course, lots of people have my phone number, because it hasn't changed for the entire time that I've been an elected official. So if you need to use it, dial me up.
Fantastic. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time. Unfortunately, a Liberal candidate did not show up tonight, but you gentlemen were here and we appreciate the conversation. Thanks for tuning in and have a great night.